Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of NBC's 10 Count. I'm C. Fall. On today's episode, though, I have Chelsea Green with me. Chelsea, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm a little slow. Went out last night, had a good night for Matt's birthday. But no, I'm really good. I just came back from my honeymoon, so I really feel I am in no place to complain.
True. And what was it like trying to plan a wedding during a pandemic?
Well, that's the funny thing is we actually got engaged, gosh, like 3 years before our wedding. And we originally wanted to do our wedding immediately.
Yeah.
And I said to Matt, like, let's give it a little more time. And then we fell into the pandemic and a little more time became a lot more time. And I think the kind of blessing in disguise is that it limited the wedding down to our core group of friends and family. And before that, we had a large guest list of like 250 people. And it ended up being about 100 people. And those 100 people were, it was everyone that I really, truly wanted there.
Right.
So that's the blessing in disguise. But it was a nightmare planning it during a pandemic.
I can imagine, and obviously, I've been married. I am married, not I have been married.
Oh God.
But yet, the planning part is the most difficult part. Like, you get to the wedding, everything's done. Yes, it's nerves and all that, but yet, the DJ, the music, the guest list you just brought up. I can imagine, like, well, my best friend, Aunt Judy's best friend, needs to come too.
Well,
what?
You know what's funny is I actually realized in that I am much more stress-free than I thought I was. I did not find planning stressful at all. I will say it was hard. It was hard to meet Matt's needs because Matt is an Italian from New York and they have a whole different set of standards for weddings. So that was the hardest part, is figuring out how to make him happy after all the weddings he's been to.
Well, the standards of the groom versus what really matters is the bride. So maybe people need to understand in this relationship that you're the boss and he's not.
Exactly. And we called him Groomzilla.
I'm surprised that's not a show on the USA Network.
I know, actually. Should be a show on TLC.
Oh yeah, Bravo, all those channels. I can see it now. You can be the first episode. Someone must have recorded it. So, let's talk about wrestling for a second. How did you get into it? Was it a friend, a family member, channel surfing?
So when I was younger, probably 3rd to 5th grade, I think a lot of people have the same story. You watch it 3rd to 5th grade, you figure out that maybe, it's not as real as you thought it was, or whatever it is, you kind of have like a come to Jesus moment about wrestling. And you're like, I can't watch this anymore. I had that moment. I stopped watching it. But my sister and I just always kind of like had a love for it. We used to sneak upstairs and watch it while my mom was cooking dinner. And I never thought about it again until I was in college, living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I was doing some homework and the TV was on in the background. And I turned to watch it instead of doing my homework. And it was Nikki Bella wrestling. And I was just like in love with it.
Wow.
I couldn't stop watching it. And then instead of doing my homework, I Googled how to be a WWE diva. I mean, it's so unbelievably ridiculous for me to say that, but I truly Googled it, found out that one of the best schools in the entire world, Lance Storm School, was 10 minutes away from me. I emailed him, and within a week I was training. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea anything about wrestling. I didn't know indie wrestling existed. I didn't know Impact Wrestling, NWA, Ring of Honor. I didn't know any of that existed. The only thing I knew was Vince McMahon has a company and it's WWF. That's, kind of what I had thought at the time, WWF. And I loved Nikki Bella. She was hot and she was like confident and sexy and still wore glitter and makeup and all the things that I kind of loved when I played sports, still being a girl, but also being a tomboy. And I just like went for it. And I never thought when I stepped in the ring for the first time and someone explained to me what a lockup was, I never thought that this would come out of it.
Right. It's funny that, not funny, but it's interesting because I've talked to so many people and I ask them the same. This is how I start all my questions. You start with how'd you get into wrestling? And you're the first to bring up Nikki Bella as someone. And I think a lot of people sleep on her, the Bella twins in general, because I talk to anyone who doesn't watch wrestling and I bring up what I do. I talk to wrestlers and they're like, oh, have you talked to the Bella twins? And they always, and I'm like, oh, have you watched them wrestle? They're like, no, but I've seen them on Total Divas, the Bella Show, their podcast. They have created an empire for themselves. So people constantly sleeping on them is kind of an insult. And the fact that you brought up how Nikki Bella inspired you, that's great.
That's like the strange, it's not the ironic thing, but there's a word that I'm missing. It's just so funny because they have transcended wrestling. They're so beyond wrestling. Like for the rest of their lives, they'll be able to do what they want because they have just put their all into building the Bella brand and the Bella Army. And when I started wrestling, that's always what I wanted to do. And I have this terrible habit of getting what I want and immediately that night thinking like, what's next? I mean, that's why I left Impact Wrestling when I became the champion. Like, what's next? Like, I hit the goal. What's next? And I always went into wrestling thinking like, I want to build something for myself that's so far beyond just being a wrestler. And they've done that. And so, I mean, I think every wrestler in the world should be looking at them and male or female and thinking like, how can I be like them? How can I have a life like them?
Yeah, and some people don't even know The Rock was a wrestler. They don't know that because of he transcended wrestling to the point of he's bigger than wrestling and biggest actor in America. You know, John Cena is on that path. I think people are still young enough to know that he's a wrestler, but it's gonna in about 10 years from now, people are gonna discover him and be like, wait, he used to wrestle for how long?
Yeah, I think John Cena's on that path. I think he's like right on the cusp, and then I think Batista is is somewhere on that path as well.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, they're just amazing. It's great to hear that Bella Twins, inspired you. But let's move on to Sunday, June 19th. You're gonna make history at Slammiversary and Impact Wrestling, the first ever Queen of the Mountain match for females, for women, the knockouts. For so long, we've had the men control those matches, but now you with Mia Yim and Tasha Steelz, Deonna Purrazzo, Jordan Grace are gonna make history. What does that mean to you, especially in a company that everyone always praises the knockouts?
I just love that no matter what, Impact is always kind of like breaking barriers. But the funny thing is that they don't do this to break barriers. If that makes sense, they don't do this to be applauded. They just do it because that's the next step in the evolution of Impact Wrestling. You know, like I was on TV having matches against men last year. Nobody ever questioned it. Nobody in the locker room questioned it. I didn't question it. The man I was wrestling didn't question it. My husband didn't question it. The internet didn't question it. But you know, there's a lot of companies that don't do that. And then of course we had the Ultimate X match. And again, that was the next step for the Knockouts division and Impact Wrestling, and nobody questioned it. I mean, that was just, we're just doing what the guys do, and this is just the next step. I'm so excited. I didn't know what the next step was going to be for Impact Wrestling and the Knockouts division. I couldn't even fathom what was next. I knew that we were just going to continue to kind of evolve and grow and kind of defy what everyone else in wrestling is doing. I just didn't know how that was going to happen. And this is really cool. I mean, really nerve-wracking, and there's a lot of pressure and it's not just a normal match where you win by pinfall or submission, but it's just, I really think it's going to be amazing for women's wrestling.
Of course. And you brought up, Impact Wrestling has done so many things. Like Tessa Blanchard at one point was their world heavyweight champion, not their knockouts champion, their world heavyweight champion. And what happened with her?
And Jordan Grace,
the digital champion. So there has been a lot of crossover between divisions, and I'm not even sure if there is divisions. Like, could a man win the knockouts championship? Is it possible? If Tessa can win the men's world championship, why can't,
I think
your
that
husband
that's
win the Knockouts title?
yeah, I think that's the beauty of Impact Wrestling. I think that they're always surprising us and you guys. It's not just you guys. They're not just surprising the audience. Like they're surprising us with the things that the matchups that they put together and the storylines that they put together. And I mean, all of it. So never say never about anything at this point with Impact Wrestling. Never say never.
I would say that with wrestling in general,
That's
Yeah.
actually very true, especially right now.
The old saying, anything can happen here in the World Wrestling Federation. Well, anything can happen in the world of wrestling, not just Impact, WWE, AEW, but also, you gotta go to June 11th. NWA is having an event, Alwayz Ready with a Z, and it's inspired by your husband, Matt Cardona. And I gotta wonder, if you're walking around your house, does he kind of puff out his chest at you saying like, did you know there's a big, huge event named around me?
I mean, look, when it first came out,
It's just
I
me
was
and you.
like,
You can share the true story. It's okay.
I mean, I just was like, this is ridiculous. But isn't every single thing that we have done since we've been released ridiculous? I mean, Matt has just done the most absurd things that, again, like, this is the next step for him. I mean, he has done death matches, he's done intergender wrestling, he has gone to every single company basically. I'm at this point, I'm not even surprised. I am just along for this ride, and I'm kind of watching him thrive. And I think this is totally ridiculous that he has a pay-per-view named after him. But guess what? I'm going to be there supporting, because damn it, that's what a wife does.
Damn straight. Now, do you and Matt just like set up at night and come up with crazy scenarios of, let's go to GCW and do this. Let's go to Impact and do this. Let's go to NWA and do this. Do you guys, because it reminds, I don't know why I have this vibe I have an ECW vibe with your core group you have going on right now, because it reminds me of like Francine and Shane Douglas. Like, it really brings back these old memories of people who are saying like, F you, I don't care what you're saying to me. I'm going to do what I want to do because I know what's best for me. Do you guys have those discussions?
Yes. Originally, when Matt was released from WWE, I said to him, he was like deciding where to go. And I said to him, like, I don't think you should decide. I think you should go everywhere. He said, I don't think that's possible. A year later, I got released and I did that. And he said, where are you going to go? I said, I'm going to do what I told you to do. I'm going to go everywhere. And in 1 week, I did all of it. NWA, I did Empower, NWA, Ring of Honor, and debuted on Impact. And I think he was like, oh, shoot, like, you actually can, like, again, like, you don't know something is possible until someone does it. Like, sometimes you just don't even think that that's an option. And that was kind of the beginning of where I think a lot of things changed for him. Was when I was released, it was like, okay, well, if she can do it, I can absolutely do it. And he started kind of like hopping around, and then we kind of got together as a tag team, and we have started discussing like, okay, how can we stir things up? Every time that we go somewhere new, like, what's our vibe going into this? What is our, what can we do to make the world talk or bring more eyes to the company, especially with NWA. Impact, they've got their, this cat will always do this. Always. Whenever I am getting attention from.
At least you're not typing and then your cat's like, I'm also going to type.
Oh, it just always does this. But yeah, we always want to bring eyes to the company, because I really think that both of us want wherever we go to be successful. I don't want to go somewhere because it's successful. I mean, that's amazing. That's great. But like, wouldn't it be even better for the story of GCW to include Matt and Chelsea, or the story of NWA in 2001 to 2005 being also about us? Like, I think that that's what we want to do, is just kind of build like a new legacy, because both of us were just kind of like floating along in the wrestling world before this.
I guess that's a good point, because, you were obviously making money, paying your bills, having a job. And the question would be, I think you kind of just allude to it, is, were you needed in those places? Now with the places you are, you're needed because you're bringing a presence, you're bringing an audience, you're bringing a new vibe, versus did the WWE need you, or did they you wanted to work there versus
Yeah,
ECW, Impact, NWA. They're like, we are doing well, but we need you.
Yeah, and I never want to be in life. I never want to be a big fish in a small pond. But sometimes I think it is better to be not a tiny little guppy in an ocean. I mean, it's just really, really tough to stand out when you're not really given opportunities to stand out. There's got to be some sort of kind of happy medium, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Go somewhere where you're wanted, for one. Go somewhere where you're wanted. Go somewhere where you can make a difference. Go somewhere where you can express all the creativity that you have up here. I mean, a lot of people made fun of me when I got released from WWE because I let it be known that I had a million and one creative ideas that I pitched to Vince. I literally sat down in front of him and I gave him a list of like 20 things that I think I could do on SmackDown or Raw. And, you know, like that might seem ridiculous to people, but at the end of the day, like that's all of us wrestlers have these scenarios in our head. We all have these ideas. This is why we are wrestlers. This is why we come up with characters and fight each other in the ring. Like, you know, we want to be able to express those things. So I think now we're at this perfect place where we've kind of got everything we want, and we still have room to grow.
Of course. And so out of those ideas that you were pitching to Vince in the WWE, did they ever say like, these are good, but we don't want to use them? Or they just shot them all down and said, these are terrible?
No, they actually one that was really ridiculous, and I get made fun of all the time on the internet still for it, was like this kind of like nun character where you know, what was Seth Rollins? There was a character that he was when he came out and he was like the Messiah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I wanted to come out with him. I always thought that I could be a good valet, but then also be able to be in the women's division. But I loved the idea of being a really like 90s style valet. So I wanted to come out with him as kind of like his follower, his disciple, and just basically be like a yes man to everything that he wanted when he wanted to kind of stir things up in each division. And when I first pitched the character to Vince and I said a nun, you know, I think you just like have this, everyone has this immediate like thought in their head of like what that is and how that's not going to work. And he was like, finally, he kind of like laughed. He's like, I need you to explain this for me. And I explained like the look that I had in mind, the attitude that I had in mind, the fact that it was more of building this following of everyone following Seth Rollins to the ring. And finally he's like, oh, okay. And you can like see the wheels turning. A lot of the scenarios that I pitched were like that. Okay, like how can we make this work? Can we make this work? What's going to be, I mean, Raw and SmackDown, when I say they're ever changing, I seriously mean up until 10 minutes before showtime. So something could work, and then 10 minutes before showtime, it doesn't, right? So all these ideas are so out of left field and so opposite that they can't tell you whether it's a bad idea or a good idea or a yes or no, because they might need to use it last minute, or they might need to give it to somebody else and have someone else use it because they fit the mold. So they'll never tell you no, but you can kind of, if you have any sort of like brain, you can tell what's hitting and what's missing.
Right. That's interesting that never actually happened, because, you know, at one point Seth Rollins had Buddy Murphy and AOP, and then he was the Messiah, and Buddy Murphy was the yes man to Seth Rollins. It's surprisingly that they didn't include a female into this scenario, because right now you have Edge and Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley kind of doing a little version of that, just in a twist.
Yeah.
So,
and I always think adding a woman to the mix just, I think, adds a little bit of like mystery, because what can a woman do and what can't a woman do? We don't know. We haven't, especially in WWE and AEW, like there are kind of like these weird invisible guidelines.
Yes.
And so when people step outside the box or get bumped by a male or hit by a male, like it's like, whoa. And I love that. I love the mystery of having a female in the group.
Because I was going to say, I think recently I was watching, it might have been Impact Rebellion, where you got powerbombed through a table by a
Again,
man.
I mean, by the biggest man, not just a man, the biggest man
he's
known to
7 feet tall.
mankind. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Impact just does things that other companies will not do. And I respect them for that.
So I actually had a question. When I posted this morning on Twitter, I was gonna interview, and someone immediately like DM me, and I was like, "Who is this?" This person wanted to know I don't know if the man or woman. Wrestling biggest fan is the account. You're always slapping people. Do you like slapping people? Because that's the question they want to know. And I think we've seen in the history of wrestling, it's always a woman slapping a man, because on TV, a man slapping a woman is that okay? But yet, do you enjoy that? And how does your hand feel after those?
I do enjoy it. I will say, I enjoy it, and it always gets the reaction I hoped that it would get. So yeah, I mean, yes, I love it.
Is there a sweet spot to slap someone that your hand doesn't feel broken after?
No.
No?
And you're always surprised with whether it's like hitting a ball with a tennis racket. You hit the sweet spot, you don't feel it, it makes the best sound and it gets the best reaction, right? If you hit it in the wrong spot, you catch the jaw or anything like that, it hurts you, it hurts everyone, and the audience is like, oh
yes. I was gonna say, sometimes with my friends, you do like someone scored, and you do a high five, and sometimes high five is like a baby high five, like, and at times you're like, and you feel your hand like throbbing after, and that's a high five, and you're slapping the crap out of people on TV, so obviously you're putting the full force behind those slaps, not trying to.
No, I'm definitely not being a baby with them.
No. Let's move on though, because you were on Tough Enough, NXT. You were getting brought up to Raw, plans changed. Brought up to SmackDown, you got injured. Were you disappointed in your WWE experience? Because I've talked to a few other people, and they're like, I had a good time, but I didn't have a good time.
First of all, I had the best time when I was on the main roster. The best time. I enjoyed everyone that was there. I enjoyed that people listened to me and took my, like, I mean, Vince took 2 of my meetings. I think a lot of people don't get meetings with Vince ever in their career. But yeah, it's definitely like unfinished business, right? I who knows where I would have gone had I not broken my arm in that SmackDown debut match. Like, I don't really like to live a life that's like, what if, because there's just no point, especially in wrestling. Like I said, I think I could have been off TV the next week, well, I wouldn't have been, because I would have been at Survivor Series, but maybe the next week after that. You just don't know. But yeah, there's definitely like a part of me, I mean, my whole career, that wanted to be at WWE, and I didn't necessarily achieve any of the things that I wanted to, like not even one. I mean, Royal Rumble for 14 seconds. I'm really happy that, when I have a baby, I can show them pictures, but when they really Google it, they're going to be like, damn, mom, I mean, you told me you were in the Royal Rumble. You weren't really. Like, I would prefer if my career there had been a little more, like a couple more singles matches or a storyline or something that I could kind of sink my teeth into. But also, I mean, I'm 31. There's many people on the roster that are older than me. So never say never to being able to go back and kind of restart the journey, right?
Of course. And I think, again, I think you and Matt have leveled up, and there's going to be a time when someone is going to be able to not ignore that any longer and say, why are we letting all these other companies make money off them when we could hire them and make money off of them? And then, do you think, obviously it would happen, actually, with Cody Rhodes coming from AEW to WWE, they haven't changed one thing about him. They haven't watered him down at all. Do you think you and Matt, if you guys both came over together back to the WWE, would they try to water down you and the version you're creating right now? Or they would say, like, go at it, because that's what's working, and if it doesn't work here, we'll change it up?
I think that's exactly it. Go out there. Let's see the reaction. Let's see kind of the ideas that you have and what you know want to do, and because it's also we're not doing things that are necessarily PG.
No.
So that's also, you know, and this is a struggle I have going from GCW to Impact and NWA. The chants that people have at GCW, I mean, we love them. It's hilarious. We get such a kick out of them, but those are not chants you can hear on TV. So there would have to be some tweaking. I mean, no matter what, there would have to be some tweaking, but I still think the general idea of what we want to bring to the table, which is very much like a package of like 90s, early 2000s, like sexy and defying kind of like stick it to the man stuff like that. Like I think that you can still do that in WWE and AEW, but it just has to be a little more PG. Boring, but I mean, you can still figure it out.
Well, yeah, Steve Austin dropping down. He actually recently he came back and he did do middle fingers, and I think I was reading online that they were like, you can't do that. But like,
Yeah,
can you tell Steve Austin not to do something?
I know. You know what? TV, like the companies do not want you to do that, and it's tough trying to figure out what are the rules for every company that we go to and what can we do and what can we not do. But again, like we just try to go into it being 100% authentic to who we are right now in this moment, and then they can tone us down.
True. So were you surprised though by your WWE release, or were eggshells always something that you were walking on? Because I've talked to a few other people and they're like, it's a you never know when you could be laid off, and that's maybe not the most healthy work environment.
Yeah, I was surprised. Because my arm I had been cleared for about 2 months, and I had been going to TVs, and I had a meeting with Vince, and I was asking for new storylines and things like that. So I was surprised. If anything, I wouldn't have been surprised if I got released from NXT. I felt me and NXT had a really tumultuous relationship, but me and WWE did not. I was like ready to go. I felt like that was the place that I belonged. My character was sexier. I think I cater to a little bit of an older audience. I'm not necessarily looking to have like beginners matches. Like I wanted to sink my teeth into like something really friggin' good. And so I was definitely surprised, but also, I mean, at the same time, not surprised, because this is show business, baby. Like this is what happens. You can never, even going into WWE, at some point, I think it was Shane Helms, someone said to me, you will get fired. It's just a matter of when. Everyone gets fired. You know what I mean? Like you're going to get fired, but you could get fired in a year. You could get fired in 10 years. You know, who knows, but you're going to leave this company at some point. And that it was like really interesting in hindsight. Like, oh yeah, you know, no, we're not all going to stay here.
True. I was gonna say, look at the list of people who haven't been laid off, and it's you probably use, you know, Undertaker, John Cena, you know, Rock, like Steve Austin, like there are certain people, and they're all Mount Rushmore wrestlers, characters.
And at one point or another, those people were at a point in their career where they were on the chopping block.
Right.
Like they were, you know, we go through these cycles, and when we're first starting, we don't know who we are, and we're figuring that out, and we're figuring out not only what works for us, but what works for you guys as an audience watching us. Because what might be authentic to me, you guys might think is total BS, and you have to meet in the middle and figure that character out. So I was definitely surprised, but again, I think I left on good terms, and I think they know that I always have 101 ideas, and if they ever called me back, I'd have 101 more.
Here's a question I want to know before we wrap up is, do you think pitching all those ideas, because again, I've heard stories, the creative team is there to give you your ideas. Hey, or we want you to do this. But you're out there going, well, I want to do this. Do you think that ever hurts you or a character or a wrestler being like very vocal about what you want and they go, I'm the writer. She should just be quiet and listen to me.
I think there's a fine line where if you don't do what they want, then yes. But I never did that. Like if they gave me, they called me, they said, you're going to be in this qualifying match for Survivor Series and your name is going to be Victorious. And I'm like, great. Like a lot of people laughed at that name, but I'm like, fucking awesome, dude. Like this is a name I can work with. This is a name people won't forget. It might be so ridiculous and sound like a stripper, but on the other end, like you're not going to ever forget this name. Once I'm Victorious, you're not going to forget that Victorious was Victorious kind of thing. And so I think if I had been like, well, I have different names for you. Do you know what I mean? Like that is something I would never do. I only suggested things because I was sitting waiting. So I wanted them to know like, hey, I'm not just sitting here collecting a paycheck. I'm sitting here collecting a paycheck because I am every single day thinking about what I can do to get on TV, how I can change my look. God damn it. I will dye my hair. I'll never forget. I said to Canyon before he hired me at NXT, I said, what do you need? Do you need me to dye my hair blue? Do you need me to shave my head? I'll do it. I will do it. Just tell me what you need. Tell me what's missing and I will be that missing piece. And like, that's what I was trying to give to the writers. So I would have, if they told me, you're going to be like CM Punk's next person who's shaving their head and stuff, like I would have done it.
Yeah. Serena Deeb did it. And, and
exactly.
I think it took her a long time to get back in the mainstream, but here she is now, Double or Nothing, Thunder Rosa. So it's happening. So it happens. Final question though to you is, what are your goals for the year? Because you've already accomplished so much this year, but the rest of the year, what do you got?
Right now, I'm currently taking acting classes weekly, and so I think that my goal is, I'm not looking to be like Jennifer Aniston or anything, but like I'm just looking to kind of broaden my horizons. My goal has always been, before wrestling, was to be like a host. A TV host, Entertainment Tonight, Extra, things like that. And so I think that with the acting classes and with doing weekly TV for wrestling, I can kind of start to figure out different avenues that I can go down to, not end wrestling, but at least start other career paths that maybe I couldn't when I was, working 24/7 for WWE. I think it's time for me, but really my goal is to get my green card because I am Canadian and people forget that I am on visas and I need to get my green card and be able to like work wherever I want.
Well, I think that's both goals are good, but I mean the green card one might be the one you really want.
Let's do that first and then we'll go from there.
Well, Chelsea Green, thank you so much for being here on NBC's 10 Count. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we talked about so many different things. Sometimes I have questions written down and then I'm like, this one just throw out the window. Let's go into it. Let's talk about weddings. Let's talk about progression and character development and all that good stuff. So thanks again. And I will be talking to your husband very soon as well. So I'm very excited about that. And I'll tell him that you badmouthed him about this pay-per-view.
Please do.
Again, thank you so much for being here. I'm Steve Fall. She's Chelsea Green. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.